Greetings, gentle viewers! We need to talk about British public safety films.
For a few glorious decades, the British government decided that the best way to convince children not to kill themselves was to produce a series of educational films about them killing themselves. They were on subjects as diverse as tractors, being crushed, slurry pits,
Daddy!
poison,
Mommy! Mommy! Help!
tractors again. Apparently tractors in the 70s were fucking murderous.
And that's just the one film. It's called Apaches. I am so gonna review it.
They told the kids about the dangers of electric shocks. Slightly different electric shocks. Electric shocks via boat. Donald Pleasance in a Halloween costume.
I am the spirit of dark and lonely water, ready to trap the unwary, the show-off, the fool. And this is the kind of place you'd expect to find me.
And of course, the dangers of holding a school sports day in an active railway line.
That's what I love about these films. They weren't scared to tackle the real dangers.
You also love it when kids die.
Well, obviously. Kids dying on screen is always hilarious.
Did they at least warn about Jimmy Savile?
Kinda?
Jimmy Savile turned up on a few, but he warned about literally everything but himself. Which, in retrospect, is a bit of an own goal. Today I'm taking a look at the finishing line, kind of unusual among these films, because most of them only had two aims. Terrify children, and educate them too, I guess. But the finishing line is almost a surreal train-based folk horror movie, but I'm sure I'll go into that later on. This was directed by John Krish, who spent most of his career in public films, but dabbled occasionally in more quote-unquote legitimate cinema. The high point of his career is probably co-directing Jesus in 1979, 2 years after completing The Finishing Line, an ultra-accurate retelling of the Gospel of Luke, filmed in Israel for the Campus Crusade for Christ. Jesus was released without any credits, possibly because they wanted God to be the only creator involved in the film to get credit, or possibly because they figured their audience might actually believe that a film could be created by a virgin birth. Jesus is claimed to be the most watched film in cinema history, and as Christians, they're hardly going to lie about something's popularity, are they?
Sarcasm, sarcasm, sarcasm.
Now, you might think that going straight from filming the mass death of children by train to possibly the most biblically accurate retelling of Jesus' life is a bit weird.
'Cause it is.
But if you replace the train in the finishing line with a bear, it'd practically be a Bible story.
I understood that reference.
You know, I tried watching Jesus, but the whole thing looked like Jared Leto telling everyone the good news about Morbius. Anyway, the finishing line. Like all good children's edutainment, it opens with vaguely ominous credits.
Okay, that front-loaded moment of silence is kind of freaking me out. Much better.
We start with a kid surveying all that is his. It's like the Lion King, everything that light touches is his kingdom. Unfortunately, it's England and light doesn't exist.
It has been brought to my notice that some of you have been playing on the railway again.
God? Nah, that's one film later. He's thinking about part of a lecture he got from his headmaster about the dangers of playing on the train tracks. It was slaughtered in somewhere between, if you don't eat your meat, how can you have any pudding? And how can you have any pudding if you don't eat your meat?
I'll say it again. The railway is not the game field.
Yeah, but if it was...
All in all, he's just another prick on the wall. He kind of looks like Dewey from Malcolm in the Middle. At least he could parachute to safety on those ears if he slipped and fell. Anyway, before easy access to guns, the little psychopaths had to get creative, so he's going to imagine the plot of The Finishing Line, with its dozens upon dozens of deaths.
This is exactly the sort of kid we usually try to restrict to the Twilight Zone.
He's imagining a school sports day taking place on and around a railway line. It's pretty intense. There's a horn section, an ambulance service, willing spectators, fabulous prizes, and, of course, dozens of colour-coded sacrifices to the gods of steam. I could really imagine this concept expanded upon as a Wicker Man-like folk horror film, set in a small insular town. In the early days of Railway, there was an accident and a class of kids were killed. But shortly afterwards, something good happened. So to keep up the good luck, the town kept killing kids with trains. And it's evolved into weird events like this that get covered up as accidents to the outside world.
You could call it The Railway Children.
That's a book. A book by E. Nesbitt.
You could call it The Railway Children 2.
Wait, 2 the number or like TOO?
Yes.
And obviously, there'd eventually be a crass American remake that's set in a small southern town, and the kids are replaced by captured Mexican immigrants, and they probably renamed it something like Training Day.
Will competitors for the 9 and under fence breaking event please move to their positions?
Oh dear God, it's like several Monty Pythons were merged together in a horrific moustache-related accident. You see, back in my day, men were men, women were women, and children all wore identical wife-beaters and upsettingly short shorts, like they were mini Afrikaner TOS Klingons.
You stop throwing grass.
Yeah, that kind of violence just makes a mockery of your upcoming deaths. So the primary teams get ready, green, red, yellow, and even blue. The first game is simple. Each team has to run to the fence, break through it, run down the embankment, across the line and back to their side to the finishing line. Unusually, though, this event voids any points scored if any team members are killed by the train. It makes sense, though. You want to dissuade the kids from killing themselves before the audience get their money's worth.
On your marks, get set.
Click? That's disappointing. I was hoping for at least a thwip.
That was impossible to hear over a light breeze, let alone the sound of the crowd. I'm glad it was a misfire.
Come on, quickly, all back, come on, quickly.
The first event is fairly low-key. They attack the fence, reinventing siege warfare as they go, run or fall down the hill, whichever they prefer, and only one kid dramatically falls on the tracks to certain death because their friends forgot that unconscious bodies can be moved.
Now I gotta cut loose, kick off the Sunday shoes.
And thus concludes the weakest rescue attempt made by kids ever since the gay, Jewish, trans, left-handed one fell into the lake at a church camp. But I do like that referee Herbert Spencer is there to ensure that all the rules of survival of the fittest are being strictly followed. I'd tell you how the points shake out for that round, but the cruelty is the point.
Blue are disqualified for failing to complete with the full team.
You know, I haven't seen that many stone-faced kids since the Fantastic Beast franchise. Next, it was the rock chucking.
12 and under stone throwing, competitors to the lineup.
It's pretty simple. Chuck rocks at a moving train. Get points for breaking windows, and extra points for breaking faces. Though the under 12 part must mean the number of stones, because there's no way some of these kids are under 12.
At this point, that's just a dramatization of Tory policy.
I wonder if the weirdly uniform as they throw the stones was in the script or ad-libbing.
Broken window, red, 2 points. Broken window, green, 2 points.
Injured passenger, 4 points.
Direct hit on driver, 6 points.
Total for blue, 6 points.
Rolf Harris, 5 years, 9 months. Looking at the disappointment of their faces, it's like they fucked up on a raid, and they need to wait for the train to respawn.
The next event is, I repeat, Last Across.
The rules of this game are simple. Ukraine on one side, Romania on the other. They have to run across the tracks to the other side. They get scored in how many get across before the train kills them all. And yes, they're allowed to block their opponents.
Think of it as a competitive trolley problem.
It's just a thought experiment, bro.
Yeah, well, that's what they said about Rocco's Basilisk, too. And that I made it.
It sounds like a reference I should probably know. I'm gonna go Google it.
You won't need to soon.
For such an uncomplicated game, there's a lot of strategizing going on.
Look, just listen.
At least we know who's in charge.
I'm the leader, I tell you what to do.
In the 70s, seniority was decided by how androgynous your hair was.
You no buts, nothing. Just run when the train comes, all right?
And how fucked off you were about it. Anyway, as Bill Shankly might have said, had I made him up. Dodging a train's not a matter of life and death. It's much more important than that.
I couldn't care what happens to you, but you just run across and you win.
Yeah, you wouldn't,
I want
would
the
ya?
points on that
You
board.
run.
Again, this is a lot of strategy.
No buts, nothing. Just run when the train comes, all right?
And a reiterating of the rules.
You just gotta run across there and get across. If you run fast enough, the train won't get you, will it?
For what boils down to dodgeball with a train. But I suppose it makes sense. I mean, the concept of running fast and not being killed seems to have scrambled the little brains more than the rapidly approaching wheels.
Oh, bravo! That is an intelligent game. We ought to play this in goal.
Another fun game of Blood Red Rover.
It's probably the only sport where they actively should have trained less. You gotta admire the St. John's Ambulance for keeping themselves relevant by helping generate more injured and corpses. Mid-20th century civil engineering was amazing. They actually had trains that killed you but kept you conveniently in one piece. Anyway, Green lost that game by quite a margin, and their leader looks pretty bummed out.
Green, no score. Number of dead, 4.
Don't look at me. I'm irrelevant.
Oh, maybe I should have yelled at them some more. They'd still be dead, but at least he'd have had more fun beforehand. Come on, please.
No! Go away!
Oh, please.
No! Get your own snot, it's mine!
Okay, you can have a bet. One of the cleverest elements of this film is how each event takes place in a slightly different bit of track. It means they don't have to waste time on cleanup between events. The last game is the Great Tunnel Walk.
The next event is the Great Tunnel Walk.
Also known as the misery of silly speed walks. Basically, all the kids need to do is walk down a several-mile tunnel. But just to keep it interesting, trains.
This is the closest thing to a movie adaptation of Let's Game It Out playing a train sim.
And once inside, there'd be no turning back. You've got to keep going. And whoever manages to find their way out the other end will be the winner.
Well, that sounds a lot like the last few years.
Get set.
And they're off. They look like the least threatening zombie horde since Thriller. You know, some films would balk at the idea of playing the circus's clown music to mark the grand finale of their child murder film. The rest would just wonder what the fuck you were thinking.
It's just a really weird fuck-kicking choice.
The composer's name was actually pronounced Fukic, but what the fuck-ick? He looks like Italian Elon Musk. I compose the clown music, and shoot the car into space, and don't buy the Twitter. This is really smart, actually. If enough trains get in the tunnel, they won't even need to bury what's left of them. And it looks like we have a winner. Well, top loser.
Give me a name. Gary Collins.
Could you have a more British name?
Peter Bradbury.
Oh, I guess you could. And third is Sharon Clark, and she's failed to notice that the band stopped playing a while back.
Well done, you three.
Oh, wait, they're starting again.
That's better. Thank you. And now for something completely different.
Oh yeah, I know you guys have been waiting for this for a long time. Especially you brows held high guy. You're gonna get a picture of the whole teddy. Yeah!
Anyway, as the UKIP Sports Day draws to a close, we get a final announcement.
Bring out your dead! Bring out your dead! Bring out your dead!
Presenting the March of the Renaissance Paintings.
So, why aren't you using the stretchers? Among the tragically deceased was Melissa Chav, the inventor of tracksuit bottoms. It was really convenient for all these kids to die at roughly the same place in the tunnel. Coming this fall from AMC, Fear the Breathing Dead. I don't know if this is the hardest version of the trolley problem or the easiest. It really depends on exactly how dead each kid is pretending to be. And that's that. Satisfied with his day's work of bending reality to his bloody whims, the godchild spends the rest of the day trying to make that outfit look cool. Alas, some things are beyond even his power. I gotta say, it's quite brave of them to try and one-up the rest of the film in the final seconds with the single most dangerous shot of the film. Hopefully it fell off the second they cut away.
That'd teach them.
Of course, it'd just start a whole new craze of safety films designed to stop directors from killing their actors. And that kind of thing really wouldn't happen until after Twilight Zone the movie. Out of all these safety films I've watched, this is probably my favourite because it did something interesting with the remake. It had imagination, it had thought put into the world building, it felt more like an actual film. And that actual film being Frogger the Motion Picture. It had Doctor Who and Red Dwarf veteran Don Henderson as a train driver, and best of all, it has by far the largest death toll. I watched an interview with John Krish where he talked about the finishing line and actually explained the genesis. It was a usual train safety, train vandalism film, but he wasn't actually allowed to show the kids playing on the train line or vandalizing it. So he came up with a concept as an act of desperation, and because he figured they'd say no and he could go off and do something more interesting instead. Imagine his shock when they loved the concept.
I love it, I must say. And the fact that it was banned for 21 years is just lovely.
Anyway, like he said, the finishing line was pulled from circulation after only 2 years. I can't think why. Perhaps it's a subtle message of,
do not do these incredibly fun-looking things that we're depicting you receiving prizes and adulation for doing.
Wasn't quite hitting home. Anyway, I'm Amanda Hagan, and I have to live with that every day.